There are many different manhwa out there. Some are unique and some are the most generic slop you've ever seen. But that's why over practically the past 2 months, I've read 20 plus of your manhwa recommendations to find out which are truly special. There have been many times where I felt like I was reading the most amazing story ever, and many more times where I've become disappointed by the sheer audacity to make me read the worst thing I've ever read in my life. But the first on this list is this is number one champion sound, Windbreaker. And honestly, I didn't think I'd enjoy this as much as I did since it isn't fantasy, but I can definitely say that this is an easy and very casual read. Some of the characters honestly remind me of the Disney movie Brink, which was a movie about this kid who wanted to be a roller skater, but his dad wanted him to focus on school. And so many moments from early on in this manhwa remind me of Persona 4, with these slight slice of life elements of the characters just hanging out. And I can't say that this is an overly philosophical story about riding bikes, but more of a story about having a hobby and the aspects of various characters' lives getting in the way of that hobby. The main character, Joe, has a similar situation. His parents and even his younger brother want him to focus on studying, which surprisingly he doesn't necessarily dislike. Rather, to him, it just seems like something he wants to be done with. But riding bikes is still extremely important to him, and this is what also connects him to other characters like Minu Yoon and Dom Kang. What I like most about this series are the characters' reasons for riding their bikes. No one in this story rides a bike just because it's fun, and for a lot of these reasons, I think you should read Windbreaker for yourself. And also because it's actually somewhat funny. And also, yeah, I heard what happened. I know why it was discontinued. This is number one champion sound. Now this next one is a complete inversion of the last, and I say this because Barbarian Quest is a lot more serious than Windbreaker. Barbarian Quest is a story about a barbarian named Yurik, who was prophesied to become a great warrior by the shaman in his tribe. And so far, it's pretty good. Yurik is pretty intelligent for a barbarian, but don't hear what I'm not saying. Yurik isn't an unnaturally smart character. He is just capable of easily learning and applying the things he learns. Throughout these earlier parts in the story, he's learning the local language outside of his tribe, and he's able to pick up on these things at a moderate but satisfying pace. During the story, Yurik and his hunting buddies are attacked, and Yurik is taken past the mountains that border the Himelian kingdom. In this kingdom lies the best part of the story to me, being Yurik's religious conflict. To give some context, Yurik's tribe believed that beyond the mountains lies their afterlife, the place that their tribe members would go to after they die. After Yurik is beaten, kidnapped, and brought beyond those mountains, he loses faith in the shaman's teachings. In the outside world, he's confronted with two other religions, the beliefs of the northern barbarians being that when they die, they go to the Field of Swords, where their first father awaits them, and the local religion, Solarism, a belief that when they die, they go back to the sun god Lu, who reincarnates them unless they don't repent of their sins. Otherwise, they'll be lost to themselves forever. Yurik doesn't believe in either of these things, so it left him confused and even terrified of what would happen to him when he died. All of this is ultimately the best part of this manhwa. Yurik learning about the new world, the religious conflict, the ethical differences. A really good part is his realization that the people on the other side of the mountain would kill their family just for a title or personal gain. The combat wasn't much to spit at though, but I think I just enjoy more fantastical combat rather than down-to-earth combat. The art was very good and atmospheric, which is really unique, as many manhwa nowadays have a somewhat similar looking, kind of almost bland look to them, but ultimately this story was a cool 8 out of 10. This is number one champion sound. The third manhwa I read was The Lazy Lord Masters the Sword, and I want to say that this is a great story about motivation, effort, and giving something your all. The story begins with a stranger who came to a village to practice his swordsmanship. He practiced there for over an entire year, with the biggest surprise being that after all that time, his skills were still mediocre. Even over the many years, the man narrating this got married, had a kid, got old, had a grandkid, and even became the village chief. He went to see that man who was dead and still held on to his sword. All of that for just the main character to wake up, Aaron, who is called the Lazy Lord. His story is pretty good, as when he wakes up from this dream, he begins to want to train with the sword. He even ends up in a swordsmanship school, which is where the other main characters are. But what I like most about this story is how the entire early story feels like a slowed down shonen training arc, which I know sounds boring, but I think this is much better than him swinging a sword a couple times and then becoming a master. Over the course of this journey, Aaron learns a lot, and even at the end of the school arc, the story and lesson become much clearer. During a part of the story, Aaron meets this cat that is a sorcerer, and I wouldn't question it. And it tells him that he has the potential to become a sorcerer, as the way he swings his sword can open that path to him. At this particular point, however, Eren is upset because he finally believed he became confident, but in actuality he had been copying the man from his dream all along, and the way he swung his sword was never his own. But the ever behind his swings is what will enable him to practice sorcery. During the story, Eren begins to learn what effort is, which is giving your all, being your mind, body, and heart. The story brings up themes of self-doubt and believing in those who believe in you. After a while, it's revealed that his effort and his sword swings were his own, and he becomes really strong, which is totally earned and ultimately super enjoyable. This is like a clean 10 out of 10.
This is number one champion sound.
Hey, if you guys are enjoying this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. My next goal is kind of crazy, but I'm trying to get like 10,000 subscribers, so thank you. This next one is definitely one of the best stories out of all 29 of them, and L.A.G or Lag is the most unique and darkest thus far. L.A.G starts off with people being absolutely slaughtered by a monster, and the group's leader and main character, Jeong Hyuk, slays this monster with the help of the remaining members of his party. Without even time to collect his party members' souls and collect himself, he is betrayed by his team members who believe they don't need his help anymore. They even kill his other friends, and even after fighting his hardest, he's still killed, only to wake up at stage 1. Phew, that was something, wasn't it? But it doesn't even end there, because L.A.G is kind of like a very cool, unique roguelike. I thought I'd initially hate it because it's a system manhwa, which is the type of manhwa I despise to the very depths of my soul, because that typically means I'm in for a solo leveling clone with Gates and the MC becoming level 100 in 3 chapters. But no, this story, although I've already said it, is extremely unique because it's about Jeong going through many of these floors with different trials and different monsters. The way he gets stronger is by collecting the souls of the monsters he's slain and gaining new skills, which I thought was generic at first, but the skills in L.A.G are really cool as there's no mana or energy system present. Using the skills takes real physical stamina and endurance, so they can never spam skills over and over again. This manhwa also features many different cool items and weapons, both of which support the amazing choreography. Jeong is also nowhere near a Sung Jin-woo clone either. I won't spoil it, but he gets a really cool power at this ocean segment. But all of that pales in comparison to how well L.A.G maintains its dark tone throughout its story. Despite how strong some characters seem, everyone always feels at risk. And not only that, characters die a lot. The people in this manhwa have to die in order to keep a consistent tone, which isn't bad. In fact, it makes it more unique. But it also isn't bland or out of taste when a main character dies, as it makes for an "I never thought this guy would die" moment, allowing for a somber tone. Our main character also has feelings regarding taking the lives of others, even questioning what he's become. Ultimately, L.A.G gets a 10 out of 10, but it did end with a cliffhanger where I stopped reading, and I've been itching to get back.
This is number one champion sound.
Now, for this next one, I wanted to explicitly mention to you guys that I don't like Nordic or Greek mythology at all. And the reason I mention it is because I was actually reading Pick Me Up Infinite Gacha before you guys recommended it to me. And I stopped reading it initially because a cell called Han Islat, our main character, Loki, and he mentioned Niflheim. That made me drop it harder than a brick on a Tuesday. But I kept reading, and I was completely wrong to judge it because those Nordic elements I thought I disliked aren't even present within the story. Pick Me Up is about a pro gamer getting sucked into an RNG game called Pick Me Up, which did seem typical at first as there are many types of those stories, but this manhwa is great at balancing game mechanics with the real stuff, like the in-game battles and the connection between the game and the world it takes place in. This is a secret that gets revealed later, but it isn't too game-like, but it also isn't too realistic, culminating in an ultimately unique setting and system. Initially, there was a really small inconsistency, as some characters are said to have talent, but it's similarly possible to just gain skills for plot convenience. My assumption is that talent is the ability to gain skills, or maybe the ability to increase the rate of progression. They purposely gain fire resistance by choosing to do so, so repetition is something that allows them to gain skills. Talent can be considered a few different things, but in this case, it may just mean the ability to grow faster than others. It's also possible the game just makes it so characters are stronger by default, which was actually explained later because there are only certain skills that can be gained with practice and ones that can be gained with circumstance. So it's still pretty cool. Pick Me Up does have pretty great combat, but Han's personality at times just sucks. But how Pick Me Up handles development is pretty good, as later one of the characters states that it would be better if their master didn't come back at all. And as a former player, Han takes offense to this, but he also wonders if the characters he used to play with felt the same way. There's also an interesting dynamic between the characters and their master. Pick Me Up was a story I had to literally drag myself away from, as the more I read, the more layers got torn away regarding the game. So it's a definite 10 out of 10.
This is number one, this is number one, this is number one champion sound.
Now, this one, the Extra Academy Survival Guide, is genuinely my top number 1 on this list. This story was amazing, and it was even harder to pull away from than Pick Me Up, because every new chapter was like a new hit of crack that I've never experienced from any manhwa ever, and I'm going to summarize this greatness for you right now. This is the type of story where the MC gets pulled into a game, ends up as a character in it, and tries not to interfere with the game's plot. This sounds generic, but in this story, Ed Rothstaler is actually an extremely competent character. Ed is supposed to be a villainous noble kid who gets disowned and ends up as a bum that you see in the end credits. But our MC's goal is to prevent that from being his fate. So despite being kicked out of the dorms, he survives out in the wild on his own and eventually even builds a cabin. But another great thing is that this doesn't happen quickly. Throughout the story, Ed is leveling up his skills and even becomes a better builder. His cabin isn't built until around chapter 30. But the most entertaining aspect is the central plot of not interfering. Something really interesting is that the main character of this game loses his fight, which normally he would win because the player is playing as him. It's very interesting that the main character of this game is an actual person rather than just a cutout of who he'd be in game. Ultimately, this story does the avoid changing the plot trope with a lot more finesse, and the story is actually present, unlike a lot of those manga and manhwa where they just have the MC intervene regardless. In this story, his presence alone alters the plot, and all his efforts to avoid changing the plot cause unintentional changes, and not just the same type. The story lists why the changes took place and what was supposed to happen, and what type of change took place, like events happening earlier than they're supposed to, or characters being in places that they aren't supposed to, all because of his attempt to stay out of the way. Alongside this, characters in this manga actually have a presence. I really like how all the girls in this story have different personalities and actual presences in both the video game story and in Ed's story. Even though they all like him, it isn't redundant and it's very entertaining. This manga also has lots of action in it, and Ed isn't playing the role of an overpowered side character. He's just about as strong as any average NPC would be, but he is very clever and has interesting ways of being strong. So this one is a majestic like 20 out of 10. I'm not even exaggerating. It's literally just that good. But I was so upset when I had to move on from it because it was just an amazing story. I just felt so emotionally attached to this story, man. Like, it was an amazing time. I'm gonna be very blunt.
I have to break your neck. It's just the way it is. I'm just a messenger.
And very real with you guys. I didn't like Murim Login at all. This is one of those typical gates opened at some point and now there are ranked hunters, but the main characters are really low rank, so he sucks, but he gets this thing that lets him become stronger, blah blah blah. When I was reading through all these, I was hoping to find unique stories, but this is the exact opposite, and I'm honestly upset that I laid my eyes upon this. The main character finds a VR machine that he cannot leave until he gets enough points, which puts him through a Murim simulation. I'm going to talk about Murim later, as I have words regarding it. For a minute, the game aspect was interesting, as he'd die if he died in the game, but my biggest wonder was if he'd ever get out of the game and what the results would be. This does happen eventually. He gets out, and for a minute he's just as weak as when he started, but then he suddenly gets the system back, which was the worst thing I've ever seen. If the VR machine was a secret training thing that gave him his strength without the system window, but when he's outside the game he can't get any stronger, I think that would be so much better because the system window completely kills it. It's perfectly fine in the game world, but in real life it just doesn't make any sense, and it's overrated and overdone. If that was the case, that would make it super cool and it would give him a reason to go back. But since that's not the case, he can just level up outside. There's no reason for him to go back. If he can see the levels and do all these things, there's no reason for him to go back inside the game world. And even if the case is the same, like the system window tells him he can only level up in the game, I gotta back up. I had to like properly voice this opinion. I have to back up. I have to get out of my really loud leather chair, back up, because I gotta voice this opinion properly, or I'm just like, it's just not gonna work out. So here we go. Check this out. Check this out. That's not needed because it's better without it. If he had the strength, but he can't get stronger unless the training is in the game world, it would be so much better. But that's not the case.
This is number one, this is number one, this is number one champion sound.
The Greatest Estate Developer was a manhwa I've actually heard of, and reading it was a great and hilarious experience. I thought people were just hyping it up at first because it's a similar situation to someone being reincarnated as someone with a bad reputation, and it's also in that European like noble house setting, like a tycoon manhwa, which initially turned me off the story, but I do not regret reading further, as this was the funniest story out of all 29 of them. The main character, Suho Kim, or Lloyd Frontera as he's known in this world, is a horrible person and everyone hates him. But lots of reincarnation and regression manhwas do this, remake the territory or land situation. This one seems to be more interesting as it's solely about that and him fixing his image. It's a really fleshed out story from the skills that Lloyd gains and his relationships with people and how he's changed them. Fighting is amazing and it perfectly fits as a secondary element, as the manhwa isn't primarily about fighting, even though that's the case. The action isn't lacking at all. Lloyd's character is consistent, he's all about the money, and also this is the first manhwa to ever actually make me laugh. Like in chapter 45 is one of my favorite moments where they're having this heart to heart, and Lloyd is going to dock his knight's pay for 6 months, and I believe that that is the best like and most funny part of the manga, because it was such a sensitive moment and he completely destroyed it. And I'm also rattling off just for a little bit more time, but this one is really popular and there isn't really much I can say that most of you probably haven't already heard, but this is a cool 10 out of 10. I didn't like SSS class Suicide Hunter at all for similar reasons. The system window, the premise is stupid, all the characters are hunters, and the main character doesn't work for his powers, especially in chapter 20 when he gained a bunch of skills, which I thought was dumb. This is an easy 0 out of 10, good night. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to split this into 2 parts because I've spent like 2 months working on this particular video, and I think that I effectively just don't like making manhwa videos. I like making manga videos so much more than I like making manhwa videos. It's just a much simpler process, and plus I think I just need a lot more time to figure out how to actually edit these types of videos, because getting manhwa panels is excruciatingly different from getting manga panels, right? And like I said, I've spent like 2 months on this. I hate the fact that I've spent like 2 months on this, right? There's been a lot of procrastination and many other things that I've done that would merely sound like excuses. So there will be a part 2 of this. In fact, I'll even add more manhwa onto the list, right? Because there's still more that were on the original list, but I have to upload something because I really want to upload something, and this will be that something. And like I said, there'll be a part 2 because I'm going to keep editing the latter half of this video. This video was a 35-minute video, right? And it technically ended at 16 minutes and 30 seconds. So I will make a part 2 and even add more manhwa onto the original list because I actually have a lot to say about the latter half. There's some really good parts in the latter half, but I wanted to upload something because it's been like 2 months and I didn't want to go 2 entire months in an entire year not uploading something, right? Because that really sucks. And I don't know. Plus my wrist hurts and I can't edit this anymore, and I don't want to take another day where I don't edit this video because this video takes centuries to edit. I'm complaining, but there'll be a part 2. And seriously, I want to thank all of you because a lot of you suggested manhwa from a video that is still blowing up, by the way, which is wonderful. Thank you so much. I've literally seen such an incredible growth. I literally watched the numbers go up as I was editing this video, and that's what makes me so mad, is that there are so many more of you, right? And I've lost people too during the I'm complaining, but in conjunction, thank you, and I'm going to upload part 2. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe.
Fear God, love Jesus.
Peace.
Peace.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.